Welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where everybody comes to hear what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Well, I've got a great guest today that he did a 180. I mean, a true life transformation. His name is Anthony Bucci. He was sentenced to a 21-year federal prison sentence, 21 years. But the interesting thing I was reading about Anthony is that he, 15 and a half years in, he was able to do his own motion, wrote himself. He wrote the motion on his own. And he was the first inmate in the United States to win a parental release for compassionate release, which up until that time, there had been child or spouse, but he was able to, and I love this when inmates are able to do this, open the door for other inmates to be able to do something that hadn't been done before. But he broadened the horizon for inmates to go home, take care of their parents. He's got a paralyzed mother that he now gets to see on a day-to-day basis. But his 180 is really something. I think his 180, we'll talk about this and unpack it, but it happened when he was in solitary confinement, thinking he didn't even want to be on this earth anymore. And from that point forward, he started volunteering to take care of the sick and terminally ill inmates. He took over 50 educational courses, which also probably helped him write that motion. He was a dog handler that trained service dogs for the handicapped. And when he got out, he published a book, his novel called Infinity Crew. He's a certified life coach, and he's launched his own clothing brand that's called The Convicted Fagin. Can't wait to get into this with Anthony. Before we do that, I want to recognize our sponsor of the show, Auto Plaza Direct. Nobody likes going, I don't think, like walking a couple of weekends, the car lot, looking for a car. Then you finally find that car, and then you spend like 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy the car, kind of like a trip to the dentist. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle of getting a car. Auto Plaza Direct. They are your personal car concierge. You just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you, negotiate your best price, deliver that car to you wherever you are. I'll also offer you warranties and financing. Full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge, the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. And tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. All right, Anthony, welcome in, my man. How are you doing?
Pleasure to be here, Brent. I'm doing really, really good.
We were just talking about you're up in Massachusetts, which they're talking about you might get a little bit of weather with the snow here overnight. So, but you guys are used to that, right?
Yeah, this is crazy weather out over here. We just can't get to that spring. I thought it was over because I'm a gardener. I love gardening.
Yeah, you can't garden in the snow, can you?
No. And my mantra is the dirt takes away the hurt.
The dirt takes away the hurt. I love that. I love that. So, Anthony, you got to take me back a little ways here. Take me into life before all this prison stuff. What was Anthony like growing up as a kid?
Well, when I was a kid, it all started at a young age. My father was a very, very abusive alcoholic / violent man. He worked in the nightclub. He owned a nightclub. He would get drunk at work and come home and cause havoc at, late in the night. To this day, I can't sleep with all the lights off at this age because it brings back trauma from when I was a little kid, because he would come home drunk and physically and mentally abuse my mom and me and my sister. And, I would wake up with screams from my mother, and I would jump out of bed and try to help her. And my father would just throw, he was a big guy, would just throw me out of the way. And, I'd end up with stitches and just, trauma that's carried with you because at such a young age, you're impressionable. And, to this day, I still live it. But, so that was what my early ages were like. My mother at 6 years old took us out of where we were living in a city called Medford, Massachusetts. And we moved to my uncle's house. She called the state police. She had $60 in her pocket. So we got a state police escort out of the house. I slept on the floor of my uncle's house for a year or two while my mother worked like 2 or 3 jobs. And, then we got an apartment finally out on our own. So, I tip my hat to her. She did what she had to do to, help us survive. But in the meantime, I was running the streets at such a young age. And my mentor, who was also my cousin, he was a gangster out of Boston. Eventually, he moved to Las Vegas, but he was hooked up with the Chicago mob. And while other kids were doing their homework, I was running around with him at 9, 10 years old, picking up envelopes of, from bets. And back then they had the lotteries. So, ticket people playing the ticket. And his thing was, if I got pinched, they're not going to bother me. I'm a 9 or 10-year-old kid.
Right.
I can't go to jail. So, I witnessed a lot of stuff. Guys that didn't pay, he would come in and hurt. And, so I was seeing things at a young.
Saw all that.
I seen everything.
So,
I witnessed my.
Anthony, it sounds horrible as a kid trying to go in and protect your mom at an early age and seeing the violence and the drunkenness of your dad. When she split with your dad and you guys, was there any other connection that you had with your dad in your life, or was it a clean split?
No, it was, I still had connection with him. He lived in and out of Massachusetts. And when he would come home, my mother would actually make me go see him, because at that point, I really didn't want to. I was kind of afraid. But then after my cousin started mentoring me and I was, saw the violence firsthand, and I began to accept it because it's only the life I knew. And then I actually understood my father, as crazy as it sounds. And
Yeah.
And, I'll give you an example, like, what changed my life. I was about 10, 11, whatever it was. And my father gave me a Schwinn bike for Christmas. And, I was, when I was at my grandmother's and grandfather's, my father would be over there. We had a 3-family house. And I came home one day without it because an older kid who was, saw the bike and liked it. And he basically took it from me. I tried to fight him, but he was like 3 years older than me. And he I went home with a black eye. And my father seen my face and he was like, "What happened to you?" I said, "Dad, the bike you gave me, some older kid took it." He goes, "What do you mean took it?" I said, "Well, he beat me up and took the bike." And he was like, "Okay." Then he goes, "Look at me." And I looked at him, and he saw my eye, and he's like, "He actually put his hands on you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I thought my father was gonna, take me to the kid's house and get my bike back and, talk to the father, like, the normal channel.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. He walked to a drawer in the kitchen. There was a little 18-inch Boston Red Sox commemorative baseball bat in there. And he said to me, he handed it to me. He said, "What you're going to do is you're going to hide this bat. You're going to go find the kid that took your bike, and you're going to get close enough, talk to him, and then you're going to hit him over the bridge of his nose as hard as you can. And you're going to come home with that bike. And if you don't, it's going to be worse for you than what he did, or what I do to you."
Wow.
So I went, found the kid. He still had a paper bag. When you have a paper route, you put the bag over your shoulder. He was sitting on the sidewalk. I walked up to him and he said, "Oh, you coming back for another beat?" And I said, "No, I just want to talk to you. Can you just give me my bike back? It was a Christmas present from my dad, and he's not very happy." He goes, "Well, you got two choices. You're going to leave here or I'm going to beat you up again." And he still sat down. And then when he got up, I moved quick like a cat and hit him right across the nose as hard as I could. He went to the ground. Blood was everywhere. And I got my bike back. But the thing was, he had an envelope. And when I hit him, it fell on the ground, and it was, his paper route money. And instead of just leaving with my bike, I turned back, took the envelope, and then left. And then, and I was on top of the world. And it actually changed the course of my life for a long time, because I liked the power, the feeling of,
The adrenaline.
taking what, yeah, taking back what was mine and standing up for myself and
How
at
old would
that
you have been, Anthony, when that happened?
I was about 10 or 11. The kid was like 14.
Wow.
Yeah. And
So that turn that happened for you, that feeling of having power, taking back what's yours, the whole adrenaline rush. How did that? Going into your teenage years, how did that develop for you?
I thought I was invincible. I was always big for my age. So, I just, when I went to it, when we moved out of Medford, we went to a suburban town. It was just like, I was like a shark in a goldfish bowl. And I was just like raising havoc. I was doing whatever I wanted, but I was also under the tutelage of an old school gangster. And, he took advantage of my eagerness and, I was pointing me, inside jobs, rob this house, rob that house, grab this guy coming out with money. Next thing you know, went from my fist to a baseball bat, or he put a gun in my hand at 14. So, as I grew up the fast lane and it was crazy.
I guess but you didn't know any different. I mean, I've a lot of different guys that I talk to on this show. The whole thing about being a product of your environment, of what you see and what people that you're with, places, people, and things. You had mentors, but the mentors were leading you into a path that was the only thing you knew. Were there other friends that you had that were outside of that realm, or was your world just in that world?
Well, I had the friends actually that I had different groups of friends. I had the burnouts, that didn't, skip school and all that. Then I had normal friends, and then I had my older group of friends, like my cousin and them,
Yeah.
that I immersed my life into. Like I said, when other kids are doing homework, I was out doing scores, just doing stuff like that. And so I was a product of my environment, but I was like happy as hell to be in that environment
Yeah.
and very impressionable at that age. My cousin, who I just spoke to, he dated Anne Margaret, a famous movie star. She would come to
Wow.
Boston. His friends were Rodney Dangerfield and those, and people
Yeah.
like that, that I saw on a regular come see him in Boston. And, so I was just starstruck and, I was wearing different clothes than all the other kids my age. And, I was living the life at a young age. And
At a young
I thought,
age.
yeah. And at that point, I was a product of my environment, but it was very willingly. I
Yeah.
didn't learn till later in life that, you know, that how I took that turn, I should have went straight.
Yeah, it's always strange when you look back on that. You see moments in your life where you could have gone left instead of right, and then how that all, I think there's even a movie that's called, I can't remember what that is, Sliding Doors or something, where one day you miss the train, the next day you get on the train, and how your life changes. Did you ever feel like, Anthony, that you were going to get in a bind and it was going to, were you fearful of getting caught? Were you just living that life that, I'm on top of the world, I got some money and I'm hanging with older people and it's all going my way? Or were you worried that maybe this is a life that I could, possibly lose myself?
I was living that life, crazy life without a regret, very selfish. Um, I thought because I was taught never use the telephone and always speak in person and, and just do things by the book. You know, if you're going to do, when I still sold drugs, I never sold drugs at night. It was always in, early in the morning and, just going against the usual pattern of
Yeah.
other guys because that's what I was taught, always like when I went to prison the first time, they called me a master of counter surveillance. So, I thought I was doing everything the right way. And I thought a real tough guy was that guy. Like eventually I got married young. I had a girlfriend, I got her pregnant, I got married and I had three daughters right away. And,
How old would you have
and
been how old would you have been, Anthony, when that was going on?
I was 23 when I got married.
23.
And I,
You got
yeah,
3 daughters.
3 daughters by my first marriage. Yep. And, I was doing everything by the book. I mean, I didn't get pinched the first time till a real pinch went away when I was 35.
Well,
I got full,
take us through the real pinch, because it reads like something you see on TV. I mean, it sounds like there was a police detective that was a part of this, and the whole thing on how, can you kind of walk us through that whole nightmare when that happened to you?
well, actually, that was my second pinch. The first
Yeah.
pinch, I got arrested for a marijuana charge, and I got 41 months in federal prison. Now, like I said, I was living that life. I had a house in Boston. I was married, and I also had a place in Las Vegas. So I was importing and exporting marijuana from California and Vegas to Boston. And I would go to Vegas. I had a house in Laguna Beach. I would look at the product, and they would ship it up to Boston. I would head out. While I was driving back, I would stay in Vegas at my house in Vegas for 3 or 4 days. I was driving a Bentley. I mean, I was just living that life.
You were
And
living the life. Yes.
yeah, things couldn't have been better. And I thought at that point, a real tough guy is a guy that takes care of his family, gives them the best clothes, the
Yeah.
best cars, the best house. So that's what I was doing. And I got 41 months for distribution of marijuana. I never got caught with anything, with just informants. And
Yeah.
so I was able to plea out to a smaller sentence, 41 months. When I got arrested, either to both times, well, I had other cases that I beat before that. So it's another way of thinking I was invincible, because there was never any evidence against me, because I never talked on phones. But once you get grabbed by the feds, they have that conspiracy, and that's what
Yeah.
happened with the marijuana. You just ghost marijuana. There was nothing but some informants, and I ended up getting 41 months. And when I went away for that, and it was like crime school, I made contacts in prison. It was back in the day where, marijuana was nothing. I had no criminal conviction. So I started out in a low level prison and went right to a camp. But I did spend 13 months in solitary confinement in that sentence, because I grabbed a prison guard and put him on the floor. Well, actually, he grabbed me, and I told him to get his hands off me, because he was assaulting me, and I put him in a thumb hold, like a jujitsu thumb hold, and put him on the ground. And they locked me up. And what I did, because I was fairly intelligent, is I wrote the town of Central Falls, Rhode Island, where I was at, and asked them for, I pressed charges on him, because I knew they were going to press charges on me and try to give me 5 extra years.
Yeah.
So I pressed charges on the cop for assaulting me, and I knew they were going to do it. So the warden came and called me to his office, and they bring me out of solitary. And they said, "You pressed charges against one of my guards." I said, "Yeah, he assaulted me. You can see it right on the camera. I asked him 3 times to get his hands off me, and he didn't." And he said, "Well, what are we going to do here?" And I said, he said, "I'm going to keep you in solitary confinement until you leave," because I was pleading guilty. And I said, "Okay." So it was back in 1998 that I was pleading guilty. And April 1st, speaking of snow, we had a
Yeah.
snowstorm in Boston. We got like 3 feet of snow on April Fool's Day. So my sentencing got delayed till January from April, because the
My
courts were so
God.
busy. So I was in solitary confinement 13 months, lost like 90 pounds before I even left. And that was my first bid. But like I said, once I got to where I was going, it was easy time.
Yeah.
We were getting outside food. We were like, it was just like you see in Goodfellas, drinking wine, smoking cigars, I'm getting the outside food. So I made a lot of connections. And when I got out, I hit the ground running, and, started selling drugs again. And I got arrested the second time because they thought I was getting search warrants and linking up with police, and they were giving me inside information on who to rob and all that stuff. When I wouldn't cooperate because they really wanted a police force, and I said no, I got 21 years for a 1-day conspiracy.
Wow.
Yeah.
What in that time period when all that was going on, the three daughters, the wife, did you have them through that first bit?
My wife divorced me just before I was getting out the first time. She had
Okay.
had enough. I put her through hell,
Yeah.
and I didn't learn till getting that 21-year sentence the second time that I wasn't a tough guy, and a real tough guy is there for his kids. I was there for my kids. Don't get me wrong. I love my kids, and I showed them a lot of love, and I never laid a
Yeah.
finger on them, and I never actually even yelled at them. But I didn't give them the quality time like a real tough guy gives them. Like I was sometimes when I was away, like they would wake up in the middle of the night crying, and I wasn't home. Um, I bought them nice clothes and nice homes, and their first cars, but I wasn't there enough. And even though I love my kids so much, I was selfish and not thinking that I was hurting them when I was.
So Anthony, when you got 21 years, did you know that you were looking at that much time?
No, actually, I didn't, because it was at that point in time, I had actually stopped selling drugs. I was into real estate. I had got married a second time when I got out. I had a son, and I was spending most of my time at home. And a friend of mine's brother was getting drugs from a Mexican drug dealer, and we told him to stop because the kid was getting messed up, and they wouldn't do it. And my friend wanted to rob him, teach him a lesson. Well, I said no a bunch of times, and then finally I gave in because I started using drugs because my sister, who I was very close to, got cancer. They gave her 3 years to live, and I was getting all messed up. I was using something I had never done before like that. And we were so close. And I was so hurt, and
Mm.
I became a different person as far as I got consumed with doing drugs, and I've screwed up my whole life. And that's why I got sloppy and I went away the second time.
Did you know that? Was it just they break down the door and come and get you, or did you realize that something was going down and that they were after on an investigation to come after you?
I really didn't know what was going on. I know that I robbed the drug dealer. I told the kid who wanted to set it up, do not talk to him over the phone, meet him in person. He ignored my request. He ordered paintings, which were kilos of coke, over the phone. His phone was tapped 2 days before, and they had it on tape. And when we robbed them, there was 9 surveillance teams watching the whole thing go down. And
Wow.
we actually got away because the plan was, it was just a simple, wasn't even anything to do with violence. It was a simple, I parked my car in a parking lot. My friend at the time pulled in with the Mexican. He parked next to me. And then we had another friend of ours who was in law enforcement pull in behind our cars to block us in with the blue lights on. And my buddy ran away down a hill with the drugs. It was a simple scheme. It wasn't even anything crazy.
Yeah.
And that scheme took literally 3 minutes to do. And by the time I left, it was 15 minutes tops. And I got 21 years for that, what I just described to you. But they didn't get us that day because the getaway driver was at the bottom of the hill and he took off. So the feds were watching and they didn't know what was going on. They saw an officer that they knew. And what they did is they put pressure on the kid who begged me to do it, a kid I grew up with for many, knew since we were in, preschool.
Yeah.
And they put the pressure on him and he buckled. He went down like the Titanic and he gave everybody up. He wore a body wire, and the rest is history. And I got that harsh sentence. But to be honest with you, I don't even have any, I know it sounds crazy, but I don't hate the guy.
Yeah.
Like I leave everything to the Furies. I let the universe handle that kind of stuff. And to me, that arrest probably saved my life because I was using so much drugs so heavily. I didn't have a care in the world, and I was either going to end up overdosing or, because a lot of stuff was going on in Boston at the time. I would have ended up probably getting killed or something.
That's deep.
So
I mean, that's
yeah,
deep to think that you get a 21-year sentence and it saved your life, because you don't automatically think that. You think of to me, the weight of that, because you and I were talking before I got on. I got a 5-year sentence. I can't imagine doing any more time than that. And getting a 21-year sentence is like, how do you eat that? I want to talk about that though when we get back. We're going to take a break here real quick. Recognize our other sponsor here. That's aaronduncan.net. It's a full-service global communications agency. What is aaronduncan.net? Well, they are the people that make bad news go away. Aaron is known as the trauma surgeon of brand crises, corporate scandals, high-profile litigation, legal investigations, prosecutions. What does Aaron do? Well, he's in crisis management, crisis communication, media relations, reputation management. He does prison consulting, coaching for a confidential consultation regarding a crisis or reputation management, an advisory role. Please contact Aaron at aaronduncan@gmail.com. Text or phone him at 636-236-5071, aaronduncan.net. The guy that makes the bad news go away. I could use aaronduncan.net when I was going through my stuff, Anthony. All right, so let's talk about this. So you get 21 years. How old are your daughters and your son at this time?
my son was 3.5, almost 4, and my daughters were all teenagers, 16, 17, and 13.
So it was, and I always say when something like this happens, the whole family has to deal with this. It's, the family goes to prison and they have to figure out in their own way, how do you handle somebody that you love that goes to prison? And then how does your life go and connect and deal with it? So going in 21 years, first of all, where did you go?
Well, after pretrial, I've been in 8 different prisons. So I was all from Pennsylvania, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut. So I've been around the block. The thing was, I got out the first time and I had my kids every weekend or every other weekend. I spent as much time as I could with them. And when I got pinched for this, I was like shocked because, like I said, I had given up basically the life because I was doing so well in real estate, and I dipped back in to do this guy a favor, and he ended up changing the narrative and blaming me for everything. And he was scared for his life because I was this mean person. And the feds, I don't know if they bought it hook, line, and sinker, but they seemed to, because it was a total flip of what really happened. I mean, he must have called me 20 times and I said no, but I did give in, and I am guilty, and I accept responsibility for all of it. But I actually got hit over the head with 21 years for a 15-minute conspiracy because it was, the war on drugs was going on.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't flip. I wouldn't,
That's when they really hit you. When you don't cooperate, man, they take you for a ride. Anthony, let's talk about going into prison for 21 years, because that's different than you're going to be there for a little while. You're going to be there for decades. What was going through your mind, knowing that you've been to prison before, but this was a different type of stint for you? What were you thinking going in? Because I know that, and I don't know when your transformation happened, but going in the second time, where were you in your mind?
I was bitter, I was angry, and I was mad. I got sold out once again by lifelong friends. And so when I went to prison, I had this real serious chip on my shoulder. I'll never forget it. Like I said, I did the 13 months for, when the prison got on the ground, but I also was at mail call, and a dude picked up I had the Boston Herald delivered, and he picked up my newspaper and he was just reading it. Mm-hmm. And I just walked up to him and punched him in the face and knocked him out. And then I turned to the whole pod and I said, anybody crosses me or disrespect me, this is what you're going to get. I said that before they loved me, put me in the shoe. But, it was right from the start. The message was pedal to the metal, and it's on. Anybody has starts with me, it's on. we can do whatever you want. I had the nasty, nasty attitude. I was angry, bitter. I knew I let my family down. I let my kids down again. We just had gotten close again. And
Hmm.
I was really disgusted in myself, and I was taking it out on everybody else.
So how long into your prison sentence because I think it happened in solitary confinement, but this 180 that happened, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I was in prison. I was in a prison called FCI Loretto, way out in Pennsylvania by the West Virginia line. And I had my friends had fell off the map. Like I said, I'm doing 21 years. I was like 7 years into my bid, and they stopped sending me money, helping me financially, and weren't really in contact. My kids were very upset with me. They had abandonment issues. They were,
Sure.
mad at me. I wasn't even hearing from them at one point for years, and I was doing whatever I had to do to survive. Whether it was selling tobacco, that I corrupted a prison guard, and he actually came up to me and he was like, "Hey, you're a pretty solid guy. I see you went to trial in your case," and I knew he was trying to get me into something. I was like, "Yeah." I go, "I would never tell, not even on an officer. What do you want to do?" And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "I can get you tobacco." So I started selling tobacco. I had a card game. I was doing things, and I was in and out of solitary. One time, somebody told on me, that I was supposedly doing something with a guard. They put me under 90 days in the shoe for investigation, hoping that I would, tell, but that was never going to happen. And
Well,
I just
and
went.
and Anthony, for those people who know, the SIS, which is the people inside the prison that investigate inside the prison, that's serious shit. I mean, those guys, they don't mess around, and um, and they'll put people away. That SIS, when they come around and they tear the place up and they do their investigations, that's weird when that happens inside prison. You see it on the outside, you got to investigate, but you got people inside that are like ants that go around there and do their thing. It's kind of a strange environment.
Special Investigative Services, they call
There
it
it is.
SIS. Yeah,
That's for
yeah,
the
that
people
was
down
on.
in the Cayman Islands that don't know what SIS is.
Yeah, I was on their radar big time, and I was going to the shoe left and right under investigation for this, that, the other thing. And by the time 2000, I was 7 years into my bid. It was around 2010. I had a card game, and somebody wasn't paying me, and I put a knife to their stomach and told the guy, "I'll never forget. I'll cut you from here to here, because I knew he was going home if you don't pay me." He went running to SIS, you knew the name, and they locked me up under investigation. This time was going to be for 6 months until the guy left. So I'm in solitary confinement. I was at rock bottom, and I said to myself, either I got to change or I got to end this misery, take my own life. But I couldn't do that. But I was contemplating it, and it was like an epiphany, like a message from God.
Mm.
I was having these thoughts, and I got a knock on my door, and it was a prison it was a guard from the first prison I was talking about in Rhode Island. He transferred down to Pennsylvania, and he picked up a shift, and he had transferred and got there when I was in the shoe, and he heard I was there and I was in the shoe. So he picked up a shift just to come see me and say hello, because he liked me. And he worked at the shoe in Rhode Island too when I was in there for 13 months. So he knocked on my door right when I was having these thoughts, and I looked up and I couldn't believe it. And he's like, "What's up, Bucci?" And he goes, "Just back to your old self, huh?" And he was passing out paper and pen. That's what they do. They go around with toothpaste, paper, pen, and all
Yeah.
that. And he like he had the paper and pen, and I took the paper and pen after I said, "Nah, I'm all set." But he was like, "Oh, write to your family, write your kids." So I took the paper and pen, and that's when I started writing my book,
Right
Infinity
there.
Crew.
Infinity Crew, that's it. For those watching on YouTube, it's right behind him.
Yep.
And cool looking cover too.
Thank you. So Infinity Crew basically saved my life starting that book. And I still had 4 or 5 months left in the shoe. I did a lot of soul searching. I started meditating. I got books sent in to me. My mom was sending me all kinds of books. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to change as a human being because, I want to be somebody my kids and society could, be proud of, not like this menace to society that I had been. So when I got out of solitary, I volunteered and I took care of sick and terminally ill inmates. I started further educating myself, taking college correspondence courses, paralegal courses was one of them. I got really good with the law. I actually helped 2 or 3 guys get out. And then, so I was in Pennsylvania then. So I started to, like I said, taking care of the sick and terminally ill inmates. And one guy ended up dying. Like he was in the hospital 2 days before he died. And the warden went to see him, and the medical and chaplain went. And he was telling them how good I took care of him. And when he died, they came and told me themselves. And the warden was so impressed. He said, when you're camp eligible, because at this time I was at a low level prison. When you're camp eligible, I'll send you wherever you want. You're really, really changed, and you're not a problem anymore. And I've noticed it, and all the guards are saying, how you're very respectful now and everything, because I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so I kept taking the courses. I took prison courses. I took the college correspondence. Like I said, I helped the sick and terminally ill. And when I was camp eligible, they sent me to Massachusetts, which is closer to my mom. And at that time, she hadn't had a stroke. And I volunteered and I became a dog handler, like you said.
Yeah.
And I graduated, helped graduate 3 dogs. One went
That's
to the
huge.
courthouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they got to live in my cell. So they were
That's
actually
awesome.
like
They
my
were
therapy.
starting at Leavenworth after I left, and I can only imagine what that was like to have a dog with you in prison. I would have loved that, and and to be able to do really good things. You're training a dog to help somebody that's handicapped. I mean, I would have to think, Anthony, that your time felt different, and you kind of ate your time differently with this transformation of what you were doing.
It became so much easier. I'll be honest with you, I was so selfish and controlling, like before prison. And then even when I went to prison, I wouldn't relinquish that power. It was like a power struggle with me and the guards. And I was very disrespectful and all that. But once I let go of that power, which was difficult for me, the time got so much easier, like you just said, and especially with the dogs. Like when I had a dog living in my cell, and I love dogs.
Oh yeah.
So
that's awesome.
yeah, it was unbelievable. Like I actually got really, really sad because I would take the dog as a puppy, and then 13 months he was going away. One went to the hospital, one went to somebody with PTSD, and another dog actually went to a courthouse for young kids who had to testify. He was like a comfort dog. And so it was unbelievable experience. It was something that made the time go by much better. And it was another way of me giving back to society, something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So that was great. And then my mother had a stroke in 2016, and I was very close with my mom, and I actually felt it. I felt like something was wrong because I was in Massachusetts, and I never called her on a Saturday. She was coming to visit me the next day on Sunday, but I just knew I felt something, and I called to check up on her, and she couldn't even press 5 on the phone to accept the call. And then we had dinner, and then I called right after dinner again, and she finally pressed 5, and I said, "Mom, what's wrong? Were you having problems with your phone?" She said, "I don't remember." I said, "I called you 3 or 4 times. You didn't answer. You didn't press 5. I could hear you answer the phone, but you didn't." She said, "I don't know, Anthony. I'm very scared." I said, "What do you mean you're scared?" She goes, "I'm so confused. I don't know." And I got off the phone. I had to wait a half hour in between phone calls.
Yeah.
And I called my daughter, and I was like, you got to get over to grandma. Something is seriously wrong. She's very confused. so they went by there. She ended up going to the hospital, and she had a serious stroke, debilitating stroke through her spine, and she's paralyzed. So, in having educated myself, by that time I had been transferred to New Hampshire, and I was, watching the different laws, trying, I'd always fought. The First Circuit called me a poster child for tenacity. I put into so many motions, constitutional motions too,
Yeah.
I thought were relevant, but I got denied. And I found it in 2019 when they did prison reform and Trump signed prison reform.
Mhm.
Inside of prison reform, there was a clause that if you put in compassionate releases, that you could now, if the warden denied you, which they did, they just rubber stamp denied everybody, you could go to
Mhm.
the federal court, So all these things I did when I did my 180, all
Yeah.
became relevant. And the judge looked at my motion. I had to ask for parental compassionate release because my sister had passed away. My father died while I was away. My mother really had nobody for an immediate family to take care of her. And so I tried to, be released for that. But the judge took it into consideration. Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing. So when I put the motion in, I was granted a hearing, and they told me I could get a lawyer. So I had this girl who I met in prison. Her name was Allison Corey. She was visiting one of my friends, and she was an attorney. And when we were on the visit, he introduced me to her, and we started talking the law. And
Mhm.
she saw that I knew what I was doing, and she actually would come visit me and ask me my advice on different cases and stuff. And I would,
Wow.
tell her, my thoughts on different stuff, because as an inmate and been through the system, like I know how it worked, and
Yeah.
and I gave her a different perspective on things, and I would, help her out, and she would, educate me on certain things too. So we became friends. So I asked her if she would argue the motion that I authored, and she doctored it up. She fixed it up nice, and she argued it for me on October 7th, 2019, and I was granted an immediate release. I was the first one in the United States to win a parental compassionate release. I opened the doors for many, many guys to go home and take care of family members.
That is
So I
such
was
a cool
proud.
story. Such a cool
Yeah.
story. So to get an immediate release like that, what in the world were you thinking when they told you that you were going to get released? Because
They
I'm
gave me,
sure you were hopeful, but what was going through your brain when they said, "Hey, Anthony, you're out of here"?
I had 2 hours. They sent me back to the unit to pack my stuff up, and everybody was hugging me, and and so happy for me, because they knew I was one of the solid guys on the unit. Like,
Yeah.
you can count on me. I'm never going to tell on you. I'm not going to, you
Yeah.
know. And I was actually, at that point, I was older, and I was like I became a voice of reason, because early in my sentence, if a Boston guy had a problem, I would say, let's go,
Yeah.
suit up and let's go.
Yeah.
You're not going to disrespect us. But then I became a voice of reason, and I educated the young guys, like there's a better way. And then, I try to help them and teach them that, educate yourselves, because,
Yeah.
the streets aren't forever, that game is over. And I
Yeah.
realized it. So, when I had 2 hours to go, I was on top of the moon, and I'll never forget it, because it was a day that it rained so hard. I had, the camp driver actually drove me home from New Hampshire to Massachusetts. And it was so scary, because it was raining cats and dogs. As soon as we hit the Massachusetts line, it stopped. And it was
Wow.
like the sun was out. It was just like something I'll never forget. And then I went home, and my kids were there, and family members, and everybody was so happy. But it all happened like that. And I was actually thrust back into society. I was scared.
Yeah.
I admit I was institutionalized. I'll admit it. I was
Sure.
just like frightened. And it took me like 2 months to be able to go out of my house. Like, I was under home confinement the first year. They gave me 2 years home confinement, but they knocked a
Mhm.
year of it off because I did so well. I published the book. I became a life coach. I was my
Yeah.
probation officer saw like the strides I was making and knew that I was no like threat to society. So my judge, they even probation had put in for an early termination of home confinement, which was great. And then because they trusted, that I was doing the right thing. But it was scary as hell. I'll never forget. I went to Target across the street from where I live. I walked across the street after everybody left, and I got so nervous. I had a basket. I just put the basket down and walked back home. And
Yeah.
I that first night I had really no much clothes, nothing, and I brushed my teeth with my finger
Yeah.
because I was so scared to be in that store. It was paranoid. It was weird.
It is weird. I wasn't in as long as you at all, but I remember when I got out and we stopped by a Quick Trip just to get a soda and fill up the car. And I walked in with my family, and when we brought our stuff up there, they said, "Dad, you got to pay." And I was just like random in my head of what was going on. It was like everything was moving like 180 miles an hour. And I hadn't paid anything. So, your card for commissary, and you don't even, your brain, I think, takes a while to plug back into society. And I always say it's like trying to jump in a moving car. I can't imagine what it'd be like 15 and a half years later, because, things seem like when you get out, they just move so fast.
Yeah. And when I got out, I knew I had a lot of work to do to reestablish my relationship with my kids and stuff
Yeah.
because it had been so
So
erratic
long.
and had,
Yeah.
yeah, but things weren't good, over the years because, I let them down. So I wanted to show them, that I've changed and all that. And I was doing a really good job. And like I said, when I was in solitary confinement, I was at my lowest point, my darkest point, and I made it through that. But in 2022, last year, I went back there.
Wow.
The shirt, my
Yeah.
daughter was a state trooper, and we were very, very close, and she got killed last year.
Oh man.
Yeah. So the last year has been the hardest of my life. Harder than harder than getting sentenced, harder than
Yeah.
3.5 years in the shoe. It was like rock bottom. It was where it took me all the way back.
Mm.
But I'm moving forward and I'm still doing the right thing. And then I'm, trying to make her proud. She passed me the torch. So I started a foundation in her honor, Anthony Bucci Foundation. And it's online too. It's a website, tamabuccifoundation.com. And I'm trying to raise money to build a park in her honor. And I'm helping I know a guy just got his partner of a life just got killed. So I'm getting him mental health counseling because I couldn't get any mental health counseling for
Mm.
18 days after my daughter was killed. And, so I know how bad that is. So I'm trying to help give back to society that way too. I want to build a park in her honor because, my worst nightmare is that she's forgotten.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
sacrificed, she pulled over to help a disabled motorist and a truck ended up hitting her.
Mm.
So they came in my house at 4 a.m. in the morning, the state police, and told me, and bring me to my knees, and never. It's taking all this time. I'm just getting back to my feet.
Yeah.
But
I can't
I
even.
will.
I can't imagine. I mean, I've got 3 daughters, and I just it takes my breath away when you say that, but
You didn't know this, did you?
but I think I know one thing though. What you're doing is an incredible thing as a dad. Keeping her memory alive, and a park would be where people go to enjoy and be outdoors and be around each other as a family. I think that's incredible what you're doing.
Yeah, my daughter was into physical fitness. She loved dogs and she loved kids. So I'm going to incorporate all 3 of them. I'm going to have a dog park
Love
area
that.
in there. I'm going to have a fitness area, and I'm going to have an area for the kids. And I've had one fundraiser so far. Like I said, I was numb. I was in the
Yeah.
ashes for so long. I'm just starting to rise back out. But like when I got 21 years of sentence in prison, I walked out of that courtroom, my chin back, my chin up, shoulders back like a Marine.
Hmm.
When I got this news, it broke me. It's the
Mm.
hardest thing ever. Like I didn't like I've heard of tragedies in families before and everything, and I'm like, anyone else, I would feel bad, but I had no idea the level of pain.
Mm.
It's
Is
unbelievable.
there a place, Anthony, that you can go where there's other um, families that have lost somebody that way that you guys can be together and talk? Like, are there
I, go-
groups
I
that you can go to?
There are, I just haven't been ready for that yet. I've been going to grief counseling every Monday,
Yeah.
and I wasn't even sure I was going to bring this up today, but it's funny because I was looking for something to wear, and and the first thing I saw was a brand new
There it
shirt.
is.
Yeah. So
I
I said,
love
let
it.
me wear this. Yeah. My daughter, like I said, state trooper, so it has her
Yeah.
8183182 was a license plate number of the car she drove. 4440 was her badge number. So I said, you know what? I'm going to wear it in honor of her today.
It's great. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm proud of you, Anthony, getting through that because, I mean, going through all that you've gone through and then having that happen, it would be easy for you to fall way back and into dark. And what you're trying to do is create space for memory and remembering the good things and who she was. And I think hopefully that park ends up giving a lot of people joy showing up and being named after. I think that's an incredible thing to do. It really is.
I'm trying.
I know you're trying. So Anthony, going through all this that you've gone through, I mean, you've gone through so many different levels of your life and where you are today. What do you think's your biggest takeaway out there to give to the listeners of what you've gone through to impart?
Well, for any young listeners, I would say there's two paths in life. There's the easy road that I thought, was the easy life. And then there's the right road, the
Mm.
right path. And though you think, the money and the fast, money and doing illegal things is, cool. It's really
Yeah.
not cool, especially young fathers and stuff and living that life. What's really cool is being there for your kids, helping them
Mm.
with their homework, bringing them to that park like I'm going to build,
Yeah.
being there in the middle of the night when they wake up from a bad dream and all that.
Yeah.
I wasn't cool at that time, and I thought I was because I was, you know, bringing the material things home to
Yeah.
my kids, but I wasn't spending the quality time and stuff. And like I said, the way I'm getting through this with my daughter is the last few years of her life. So we were inseparable. We talked 4 or 5 times a day. She fully forgave me.
Mm.
I helped her, I did her apartment for her. I did all hanging the pictures and all that stuff
Yeah.
like I would
Dad
have
stuff.
never, dad stuff that I never would have done before. I would have hired one of
Yeah.
my carpenter friends to go do it. You know what I mean? But with her,
Well, thank God you had that though. That You guys,
yeah, I
you
have
guys were able to be close and put all that back together and be together.
I don't have one regret in the world as far as that goes because we got that tight, that close.
Yeah.
I had COVID a month before she did, so I took care of her, shopped for her, hung out and watched TV with her when she was, sick with the COVID because she had asthma. I went
Yeah.
and got her medicine. When she had colonoscopy
Mhm.
in January, a couple of months before she got killed, she asked me to take her. Like to me, that was the greatest thing in the world. I
Sure.
know it's because usually you would ask, a woman, but she asked me. I was the only one who had a key to her apartment. It was just we were on such a level of trust and love that, you know, it's just such a shame that this had to happen, but at least we got there.
Yeah, you did. You got there. Yeah. Boy,
Okay?
life throws so many different curves,
Yep.
and how you react to them is how you walk through life. It's just, you can't ever explain something like that.
And I
Can't.
don't, as far as what you said is, like I said, there's two paths in life, and I would tell the young listeners to go do the right road and use all that talent and all that energy you have on the right thing. Because look at me,
And
I
it's
got
not always
20
the
years.
easiest, you know?
No,
That's the thing.
it's harder. But I
Yeah.
got 20 years in prison, and I'm a fairly intelligent guy, and I could use all that smartness and energy and doing something right, and I would be a rich man today. Instead, we live in a 2,000 square foot apartment that we rent. I drove a Bentley back in the day, and now I'm driving a leased Jeep. But you know what? I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore, and
Yeah.
I can live a nice, peaceful life and help people and help myself and be there for
Yeah.
my mom, because my mom had nobody.
Yeah.
So I'm showing her a better quality of life.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's important in life is the relationships you have with your family and friends, and material things are on the outer level of that. And,
Yeah.
both you and I have been through the material stuff, and you find out when you go through your worst nightmare, what's really important. And that's, some people never find that, Anthony. That's the thing.
Yeah, all those cool guys that I thought were like my boys and were there for me, they dumped me in a heartbeat. They 2 or 3 years and they were gone.
Yeah.
Into my sentence. The guys that I
Yeah.
loved,
Who's
and
Anthony?
protected and took the time for, and what are you
I
gonna do?
want to make sure, Anthony, that everybody, I know you can go to Amazon to get Infinity Crew. How else do people get a hold of you?
Okay, you can go to if you want to buy the book and check it out. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and in like 75 other selling platforms. So just type into Google Anthony J. Bucci Infinity Crew, and it'll pop up. I'm also the Convicted Vegan on Instagram. I'm vegan. I know I don't look like one, but I'm vegan, and I'm on Facebook under Anthony J. Bucci. And if you want to check out my website, or my personal website is The Convicted Vegan, where I have my apparel, clothing line. But if you want to buy some, just DM me, because I'm on here, and I'll give you a better deal. Plus, I'm really not set up yet anymore for selling on that platform. So just DM me on Instagram. Right. And I don't know what else. Oh, I wanted to say one more thing. If you want to check out my daughter's, the website is, tamarbuccifoundation.com. If somebody can donate $1 towards that park, it would be a score.
Absolutely. Say that again, that website.
Tamar, Tamar, Bucci, Bucci, foundation.com.
Love it. Hope everybody got that. I'd be doing a good thing. If everybody reads Infinity Crew and they want to read another book, I've got one too, Nightmare Success. You can check me out, all the places that Anthony talked about, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Love the likes out there on social media, comments. If you go to Apple, go to those 3 lines at the top, hit the follow button. Spotify, you hit the bell. Leave a review. That really pumps up the volume of how they promote the show. All you do is you just scroll down my page there, and it's got reviews. Click on leave a review. It says write a review. BrentCassidy.com. Remember, I spell Cassidy wrong. It was spell it with a T, Cassity. BrentCassidy.com. Leave me a message there. As I used to say when I was writing my emails back and forth in prison, stay strong. I'll do the same. Anthony, thanks so much today, being here, sharing your story. Proud of you, man.
Thank you, and it was a pleasure.